focusing a little bit on your presentation this morning, and in that presentation, you explored the way publishers could assist authors and editors and reviewers in developing high-level research, high-quality research. And I was wondering, for the folks who couldn't make the presentation, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, Tom. It's so nice to be here, and I really enjoyed the session this morning. It's I'm really passionate about this particular subject, particularly because I think it's getting more and more complex for authors and editors. I think just navigating, but authors in particular, navigating the landscape of the options that they have available, how they can get, they're competing with lots of other people to get into the best journals, to get their paper published, and then once it's published, it's no good if it's not read, and it needs to be read by their peers. So I think we have the interests of that customer group, your patrons, our authors, very much in mind. And I was exploring ways that we both bring to the table, training, tools, guidance, whatever it might be, to help authors navigate that complex landscape.
Were there any specific strategies you talked about?
I think, well, there's a couple of things. Certainly for non-US, non-English speaking authors, I think there's some really nice tools and services out there. We partner with one. I think most publishers partner with one of these services. And it gives them a chance to get their paper perhaps translated, checked, make sure that it's going to be at least read and considered by journals that they might want to get into. I think those are good services. Just the tools in the system, how you find reviewers, how you can actually plug in those things to make the editor's job easier, to make the reviewer's job easier. I think those kinds of tools are very valuable too.
Now that's from the publisher side. Do you have any sense of, or what do you think librarians could do to assist in this area?
Well, when we were investigating how, some of these topics that we wanted to talk about today, we were looking at some of the really great library sites that there are out there, and I had one in the presentation this morning that really gives an author or library patron a place to go to find everything they might need to find in terms of putting their paper together, what resources there are out there, because there's some great services like COPE, for example. If you're publishing a clinical paper, there's some great ethical guidelines, that kind of thing. So this particular library site had a lot of links to these different services that are available to basically anybody who wants to really publish and get into really good quality research.
Yeah. In another area that you talked about this morning, I wanted to investigate a little further regarding archiving. You stated your personal opinion, questioning the responsibilities of various players in the archiving role, and you questioned whether publishers or even libraries should have the primary role in the archiving. I wonder if you'd expand on that a little bit and what your thoughts are about that, because it's a very serious problem that affects all of us, and especially the library's primary missions.
Absolutely, and I think it's an incredibly critical issue, and I think as far as the core journal or book content is concerned, I think we have nice processes in place, we have good partners in place that we work with, that the library community work with, people like Clark's and Portico, and we can work with them to make sure that core content is preserved. And in fact, when I was at a previous publishing company, I actually had a journal that stopped. It closed down, and we thought, well, let's release it through one of these archives just to test it and see if it works. So that was, it's nice to know they're there, and we are very strong supporters of them. I think what I was questioning was the data archiving, so the data behind an article, because that data can be in many different forms, formats. It needs to be kept up to date. It will vary enormously what kinds of data need to be collected by different subject areas. And so I think there's a lot of discussion needs to go on about, is that the library role? Is it the publisher role? Is it the funder's role? I mean, whose role? Is it the author or the researcher's role? Is it the research lab's role? I think everybody knows that data should be collected and preserved so that we can test the reproducibility of research. But I think there's we have some way to go in terms of figuring out who should do that, and I'm not sure that publishers are best placed to do that. But I was interested in getting some feedback from the room, and it was fairly clear that there were more librarians in the room who had felt that that was an important role for them than there were publishers.
It may even be that libraries are aware of the problem and trying to address it, where it may be the institution. Because the library may not have the capabilities. It may be the IT departments.
That's true.
And
yes.
actually you talked about standards as really where probably we need to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you want to talk a little more?
I think we've done a great job in working together on, first of all, developing standards and then making sure that we use them. I think the DOI is something that is just widely used. You wonder how we could publish without things like that now, without the DOI and Crossref and some of the great standards that organizations like NISO are helping to develop for us all. There are not the same data standards. Certainly not in the medical space that we work in. There are some small areas where they have got some nice repository and they have standards, but one of the things that I was saying is from discipline to discipline, the data might be, they might be images, they might be videos. If it's surgery, for example, it might be a video.
Right.
If it's another discipline, it might be CT scans or X-rays, or it could be pure data. It could be data about patient outcomes, or those kinds of things. So I think that's why I think it needs to be, standards need to be developed discipline by discipline.
There's sometimes tension between libraries, which are primarily nonprofit, and commercial publishers. Is this an area where we can collaborate, where we don't have competing interests?
I think so, and I think it was interesting. I think when I was pondering that question of, are there competing interests, and the way that I see it is, we're a very mission-driven organization, and as far as we're concerned, our mission is to improve patient care. So it might seem strange to talk to a publisher and say, well, what brings you to work every day? It's actually, can I through what I do put the right information in the hands of physicians and nurses to get the best outcome for the patient? Your role is to get the best outcome for your patrons. They might be, physicians as well. If it's a hospital library, it might be medical researchers. So in my mind, I think we have very much the same mission to improve the quality of information that gets into the right hands of the right people. So I think there are lots of things we've done really well to collaborate together, and I think there are still lots of things that we could continue to do to collaborate for that core common goal.
Good, yes, I think so as well.
Good.
Are there any examples that you can, getting back to this collaboration, because it's really fascinating, and it looks to me like it could be an opportunity for both publishers and librarians. Getting back to this notion of collaboration, are there any specific things that Kluwer is doing, or even other publishers that you may have heard of that focus on this kind of collaboration? I
think it's finding tools that make our joint patrons, customers, whatever, users of the content, finding tools that help them to do their job better. It's interesting, it was something that James Neal mentioned in his plenary this morning. And for example, we have tools that will help a hospital librarian or a medical librarian do a systematic review. Store that systematic review. There are standards that need to be done, that need to be rerun every so often. So we have tools that help the librarian do that, and we get feedback on those tools, and we evolve them to help them to do what they need to do.
Have you heard of any examples of how that's worked? I mean, in a library where they've been able to do this kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So with a systematic review, you need to obviously find the widest possible portfolio of content, and then set your criteria and rerun that. We've got some very nice examples of where people have run reviews. For example, there was I think it was a new strain of flu that came out a couple of years ago. One of our customers did a review of the deep literature and found exactly the same symptoms had been something like 25 years ago back in the literature, and they were able to surface this worked then, so maybe it would work again now. It was interesting that just very often in clinical research you think you need the latest, but actually sometimes patterns of disease can come and go. So that's an example of one for sure.
I have a couple questions having to do with discovery. And there's been talk at the conference about the impact of Google and Google Scholar, and even the suggestion that we put too much energy, libraries and maybe publishers put too much energy into discovery tools. I don't subscribe to that personally, but there is that tension that we should, libraries maybe should just focus on providing the content. So my question is, what do you think about that? And the second question that comes with that is a publisher might create, or a vendor might create a discovery tool, but it might be narrow in focus and not, and I'm not talking about the dark matter, I'm just talking about the world of information.
Absolutely.
How do we collaborate so we don't feel as a library that, oh, we have to get this and that one and that one in order to get a true review?
I think it's an evolving area. I think we've done, there are some nice discovery services out there. I think they are able to meet some of the needs of the library patrons. I think we have a little way to go still to make them really always usable. But I think what we see, and certainly the research we do, is there are different use cases for the different discovery services. So somebody maybe starting from scratch might start with, wanting to investigate a very broad area, might start from Google or Google Scholar and say, let's just cast our net as wide as we can. But then when they want to focus in on either the right answer to the right question, or maybe I know this paper is out there, then I think they're much more likely to go into the library discovery services, which will cut out some of that broader noise and help you to get to what you need to get to. And I think how we bridge those two and then take that sort of seamlessly back into and out of publisher resources, I think is something that we need to keep working on.
If I can follow up, just one thing you talked about, and it's something that I remember from my library school, you used the term newsjacking.
Oh, yes.
And I was taught in my reference class many years ago that the best thing a librarian could be is proactive.
Yeah.
If there's something in the news and you know a professor or a subject is interested in it, provide them in advance. And I want to compliment you on
Thank you.
in that same concept, because I think that's very important in a world where we are swamped with information.
Absolutely.
But again, there's this narrow versus broad. Should that be a publisher role? Should that be a librarian's role? Where does
can we work together
we
to make
certainly
that happen?
Can work together.
So I think what we see, for example, is if something comes up in the news like that, the first thing that happens is physicians have a stream of patients come to their door with the Dr. Google, results, or I need you to tell me about this, and if we can work together to put good resources in their hands to say, this is in the news, this is what you need to know. And we have a number of services that either we can go direct to the end users, or we can provide to the library and have sort of as library widgets, if you like, so that if you're in the library and something comes up, we can provide you that sort of here as a set of resources that might be useful on this topic.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable, and I think for libraries' interaction with their community, I think that's a very important step.
Well, I think in talking about all of this support for researchers and so on, and then this collaboration between librarians and publishers and so on, in what we've just been speaking about and in other areas, how does the open access environment impact all of this?
To some extent, it's just a different route to get your content out into the market. I think there are almost now as many different kinds of open access journals as there are subscription journals. And even in subscription journals, you get everything from pure subscription, institutional subscription, membership models, through to controlled circulation, which is still out there in the market, which were always free. And then you have now a range of open access options. And for me, I think it's all about the essential quality control of the output of research. And I think it doesn't matter whether it's open access or it's subscription based. The important thing is that it's peer reviewed and trusted. And then I think it's really just a question of how you get it to the end user. And I think for some end users, open access is, as an important route, and obviously for funders, it's very important to them. But in other cases, we want to be able to offer it free to the end users through the library, perhaps. So there's different ways of doing it.
Well, it seems to me that this notion of quality in open access and in subscription-based models is essential, particularly in the medical field. I mean,
Absolutely, it's crucial.
It's got to be.
Absolutely.
Albert, did you have another?
No.
One thing that we were wondering is if you were sitting in Albert's chair and my chair, what question would you ask yourself?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I guess it's, what do you see next? Where do you see this whole explosion of information going? And I guess I would ask you the same thing. How are we together going to cope with this explosion of information and help that end user patron, whether they're a law professor or they're a faculty member or they're a physician about to go in and see a patient? How do we get this how do we help them navigate this enormous portfolio of information and give them just what they need and know that they can trust it?
And the whole scholarly process and the growth of literacy and the growth of scholarship, especially from Asia, is making it more and more difficult for someone to keep on top of
it's
this.
A challenge.
Do you think that part of it is the role of academe in requiring publication that maybe needs some sort of changing?
Oof, that's a big question.
No, part of it is essential to what's happening. Why is there such a growth of information? How do we give it to our users, provide it to our users in a way that they can even manage it?
I mean, as the investment in research has grown, and it's particularly grown worldwide, and other countries are publishing more and more in English, that the available information has, without a doubt, has grown. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And you talk to any editor of a big, high-quality journal in the US, and they have seen the submissions to their journal grow astronomically. And of course, the amount of space they have to publish has not grown to match that.
And this is just talking about what we think of as more traditional formats.
Absolutely. Yes,
Books
absolutely.
Right.
When you start adding in, as I think some of the questioners, you mentioned James Neal's presentation, some of the questions that came up around that, and then the earlier one from Anya Smith, there are so many other formats that libraries are being looked to preserve and make available, that it's as you indicated earlier, it seems to be an overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And it's going to take a team effort to do the best job that we all can do to make it happen.
After World War II, the United States thought we could collect everything. There were plans to collect everything.
The Farmington Plan was the name.
And it seems that we're in a similar situation now because of the availability of the technology. After World War II, there was another increase in technology. We're looking at it now, and I think we are foolish to think we can solve it right away. And as you said in your presentation, this is a work in progress.
It is.
It always will be.
I mean, just for example, if you look at YouTube, I mean, you're looking for perhaps quality medical videos to perhaps show your patients, or maybe teach a class, maybe do a journal club with. You want to provide some video. This is what it looks like. We have looked at tons of videos that are out there on the web, and it's so hard to figure out which ones are trusted, which who did which procedure. Is it something that you can trust, that you can then put into a collection of content that you could use for teaching? How do you editorially vet that with colleagues in the library and academic community and make sure that what you're delivering to those students, tomorrow's professionals, exactly the right trusted information? And it's a big challenge once you get out there into all of these other different media.
It certainly is. It's overwhelming, as we said earlier, and this notion of quality control of this universe of information, it's a staggering,
Maybe
staggering job. And
maybe we won't be able to do it for everything. Maybe we will be able to. Maybe what our job is together is to signpost. This has the, the quality stamp, and maybe this is something by all means go and look at, but just buyer beware.
And there seems to be, just from the early presentations here at this conference, a real awareness of this problem and the challenges that it
Absolutely.
offers.
I don't think we found the solution yet,
No.
but we're certainly beginning to realize
We're working on it.
the
That's why
scale.
we're here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly.
Jayne,
Well-
thank you so much.
Well,
We
thank
really
you.
Appreciate you
Very
coming
much
by
enjoyed
and
it.
talking to us.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed it thoroughly, and I've learned a lot.
Okay.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.